Hello, my name is Father Jacob Rouse, and I'm the pastor of Notre Dame Parish in Cresco, Iowa, and this is the third of three videos about attachment styles. If you have not watched those other two videos, they will be in the description, so I encourage you to watch both of those in order, and then this video will make more sense. All of this information comes from Attached to God by Krispin Mayfield, which I highly recommend you getting yourself a copy. Also, I recommend it because there's a few exercises and remedies that he suggests in this book that I mention in this video, but I'm not going to go into full detail just for time's sake and for, advertisement purposes. So I'm not getting any money from this. I just think it's really, really good. And if you benefit from it and someone else could benefit from it. So let's get right into it. So we've talked about the three anxieties. You've watched the videos, okay? Anyway, for those of you who operate out of an anxious attachment style, we want to move from anxious attachment to rest. We've mistakenly believed that we need to follow the law to be accepted by God, and we've completely missed out on the understanding that the law itself was given for our good. It's not something that's going to keep us in line, and if we get out of line, then we're going to be punished. The whole point of the law is so that we can stay in a certain framework so that we can be happier. That's the whole goal, is our happiness and our eternal bliss in heaven. I also recommend a video I made about morals and how it's like a giant football pitch or soccer pitch or field in the sky, where if you have the rules, you can play as hard as you want, slam into them. The fact that we have ancient sacrificial spilling of blood rites in our Jewish and Hebrew ancestry, and the fact that we have the Eucharist and Christ offering himself on the cross, the fact that we have ways to atone for our mistakes means that the Lord knew we were going to freely choose to mess up anyway, and he wants to give us all the opportunities possible to get back to right relationship with him. So one of the exercises that Krispin Mayfield suggests and describes is called the commandment exercise and the monument exercise. This is listing out the commandments that you are so anxiously clinging to, and looking at what is the good of them. And then when you see the good in that, then you can freely follow them, but also go above and beyond them. And then the monument exercise. It's typical in the Old Testament to set up a stone or an Ebenezer, something that says, yes, this is a time when God helped me, when I had success, and when I did something courageous and I benefited from it. So looking back on your life in different monuments, different times when you've been courageous and you've realized that God is still with you even when it got scary, and revisit those. When we let go of our tightly filled, anxious grip, our hands are more free, to be filled with things to help us play and to help us serve and give to others. For those of you who operate out of a shutdown attachment style, we want to move from shutdown to full engagement. C.S. Lewis is quoted as saying, "We must lay before him what is in us, not what ought to be in us." And so moving from shutdown, remember shutting down those negative emotions, to engagement means engaging with all of you, not just the parts that are pretty or the parts that you like or the parts that you would post on social media. So I'd like to read this quote. I tried to cut it up as much as I could, but I think it's really, really good. This is a quote that the author is quoting from another author. "The American church avoids lament. We engage in shutdown strategies, focusing primarily on what has gone well, the healings, the transformations, the answered prayers, all while striving to keep the bad stuff in the basement. Think about the general key and mood of most worship services, or turn to your local Christian radio station, most of which have taglines like positive, uplifting, wholesome. It's hard to find space for lament or other uncomfortable emotions." So without lament, and I use that word intentionally, lament, without it, we can only accept guilt and shame for when things don't go right, or for when I'm doubting God, or when I'm angry at God or life or whatever. it leads us into a faith which is based on fear, and then reverts back to anxiety and attachment. And then it makes that our works of righteousness are either owed rather than just freely given. So in seminary, we had an entire semester dedicated to the Psalms, and that's the 150 prayers that are in the middle of the Bible. And about 1/3 of that, we part of our testing and our quizzing and our final exam was to identify the types of psalms, and there's lots of different types of psalms, primarily praise psalms, thanksgiving psalms, and lament psalms. I think it's over almost 1/3 of them are lament psalms. Remember, Jesus himself prayed these lament psalms, like, "Why, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And Psalm 88, which is the absolute pits of black, dark despair. So if the Bible itself is teaching us to pray out of a place of darkness and lament, the authors and the Lord himself wants us to acknowledge that and engage with those negative feelings. The exercises that Krispin Mayfield, the author, suggests is a Lectio Divina exercise. This is a very Catholic practice of taking a passage of Scripture and engaging with it prayerfully, meditatively, is that a word? So for instance, the story of raising of Lazarus. You don't just, you in your mind, it's imaginative as well. You walk through what Jesus is doing, what the people are doing, put yourself in their shoes, the feeling, let yourself kind of be part of that story. Feel the lament, feel the despair and the pain and the anguish of Jesus himself crying, or Lazarus' sisters being sad and questioning the Lord. When you allow yourself to engage in those feelings, you're just going to be opened up. And then the next exercise is stepping into the story, stepping into your own story and doing the same thing and putting yourself in different positions and engaging with the full part of you. So when we engage with all of our emotions and our attributes, character defects, flaws and successes and attributes, we can more fully connect with the Father instead of thinking that we have to hide a part of us. And that's just going to lead to more and more freedom. And finally, for those of you who operate out of a shame-filled attachment style, we want to move from shame to delight. Remember, I'd like to define that shame is bad. Guilt can be good. If you feel guilty for something, it probably means that you did something wrong. If you feel shame for something, it probably means that I am overly anxious or concerned about that thing I did wrong, or I'm wrong. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am just bad. So we don't want that. Guilt is good because it keeps us in line with the rules we're supposed to be following, which are for our happiness. But shame pushes you down into isolation and darkness, and that's where Satan does his best work. So it talks about evaluation. When we're constantly evaluating ourselves and compare and despair is a phrase that I've used before. We're constantly evaluating ourselves compared to others, either in real life or in social media, or comparing your priestly ministries to another priest. Don't do that. Instead, look at yourself like an inner child and practice self-compassion. I think of how many times a mother has shared with me that, or posted a picture, there's social media again, for Mother's Day, her toddler, picked all the dandelions from the yard and gave it to her as a bouquet. Dandelions are technically, depending on some horticulture, they're technically weeds, but you're just so delighted that they did that for you, that they picked something, they collected it and presented it to you. You are delighted by that action. Can you imagine if you evaluated that child's actions and said, don't go buy me real flowers, a real bouquet from the flower shop. How dare you give me weeds? Like, no, we wouldn't say that to a child, and we wouldn't expect them to know how to do that. And so when we look at ourselves with curiosity and with delight, as the Father sees us with delight, I don't know, it just really sets us free. Also art, I've got framed pictures and things that I've hung up that I've received from children in the school. And if you wanted to evaluate it, you could say, this is not technically correct. This is not very, very good art. But I delight in the fact that, I'm going to post it right here. this drawing that this 2-year-old made me. Like, that's priceless to me, and I delight in it, and I delight in him as well. So the exercises that the author suggests are, it's called a pause from evaluation. He asks you to look at all the things you're evaluating, how to pause from it, and then walking in the cool of the evening exercise, making space in your day and in your life and in your prayer for stuff that you delight in yourself. When we see ourselves as God sees us, which is his delightful children that he made and loves and sustains, we can much easier see others that way and delight in them as well. Okay, finally, for those of you who suffer from all three attachment styles, there's no hope for you. No, I'm just kidding. I think every single person watching this video, myself included, as I've been making these and reading about this, I have tendencies for all three of these. And it's not hopeless. It's a beautiful thing to be aware of, to define, to name and claim and tame, and then to move into these areas of delight, of engagement, and rest. The image at the very beginning of the book that the author describes, that a secure attachment, we've been talking about all these negative attachment styles, but the ideal attachment style is a secure attachment style. It's like those people or your family or your friends, just name that person or group of people that you can just hang out with, spend hours with, not know what time it is, and you just feel completely secure. That's the goal. That's the ideal of where the Lord wants to be with us and where we want to be with ourselves. And just a cozy, warm, safe, secure space. Because then they can help you when you have that secure attachment with God and with others. Then when things in life get not so safe and not so easy, then we can rely back on them, on those relationships and attachments to face the challenges that life gives us. I hope this was helpful. It was a lot of fun reading and making these, and I will see you this weekend.